Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name's Joe Buskens. This is our family's boat shop, and we are in episode 11 of our hardtop build. Custom hardtop we're building for our 29-foot center console that we run fishing charters out of in the summertime, and we built right here in this shop. So the part is now complete, and if you've been following along, you've seen all the steps from building the plug to the mold to actually laminating the actual pieces that build our hardtop. And now it's time to trim this thing up. And we have actually already started. You can see we're yielding, I would say, between 3/16 and 1/4 of an inch. And trimming these parts can be a little tricky sometimes. So I want to show you guys how we do it and what I've found has worked for me. Now, it's usually a good idea to have some eye protection and a good mask of some kind. This is the 3M. I'll be sure to put a link below on this one because I really like this particular mask. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn our fan on and I'm going to show you guys we're using a fine. It's a little oscillating multi-tool and a diamond grit. Now, this is something, the bit itself I picked up at our local Lowe's, and it's like a masonry bit. It's designed for grout and whatnot, but I find it works really, really good for cutting through fiberglass. So I'm going to turn some fans on, turn the vacuum on, and a good idea to have some airflow anytime you're doing this kind of stuff. A couple nice fans running, and if we can catch some of the dust with a good shop vac, that's money well spent. All right, here we go, folks. Now, what I like to do is make a light initial cut, just like we did there. I'm not trying to go all the way through initially. We're kind of just cutting back and forth, back and forth. And what I find is if you try to plunge cut all the way in through the glass, sometimes if you're not at the right angle with your blade, it'll veer you down into the mold. And we do not want to do that. If you look here, you can see that we skirted just above the gel coat and we've got a beautiful clean cut, but that took about 10 minutes or so to get there. Now, one thing I wanted to show you folks is prior to starting our cut and prepping for this, sometimes what will happen is the gel coat or a little bit of resin will hang over the edge, and the tool for the job, I'm going to come around, maybe we can come over here where we haven't done any scraping yet. I like to take a scraper and just break that edge. You see right there, there you go. See, we broke that little resin drip. That is a wonderful little tool in lieu of like a grinder or something. It's going to remove a lot of material. This little scraper, again, a very inexpensive one. Anything off your standard shelf at your big Home Depot or box stores will do. Now, I've also been using this for fairing and shaping some of this surface. And you can see there is some scrape marks across there, and you can see some of these shavings that have accumulated. And what you're going to want to do is push down and draw it to you. Is a fantastic way to smooth and knock down little burrs. Now you can sand, and we do a lot of times, but this is a great way to get some material off of there without sanding. Now I like to go from inside to outside, and then if possible, from front to back. You can see some little high spots right in there. It's okay to even focus a little bit. When you see a spot that's a little high, work it down. Now this is not the same as sanding or fairing. This is kind of a way to get just a knockdown on your surface prior to applying your filler, and it'll level that surface off a bit and save you guys and gals some time if you're trying to smooth this out. So I want to jump back over and go ahead and finish our cut with our multi-tool. If you don't own one of those little oscillating multi-tools and you're doing fiberglass work, it's money well spent for very precise cuts and shaping of material. Now that is a fine F-E-I-N, but Bosch and Makita, they've become quite popular now, and a lot of even craftsmen make some. I picked up this little blade. Now this one has teeth on it, and one with teeth can work, but I find they don't last as long as the ones with the diamond that are made for masonry and whatnot. And it's off the shelf. You don't have to go to some specialty shop. Most of the Lowe's and Home Depots are going to have those. So what we also did is, so that we have a point with which to lift this out, is we drilled some little holes, and we've got some small shackles just like so. And that's going to allow us to use our overhead winch there. Now, you wouldn't have to do that, and you don't have to have a winch or a hoist, but we have one, and we might as well take advantage of having that. But what I plan on doing is we'll continue to trim all the way around. We're gonna make up a little bridle and get ready to pick this thing up. But before we lift it out, we are gonna apply some fairing filler and start shaping this thing up and make it look nice and smooth, because it is going to be a highly visible part. When we're behind the helm driving our boat, you're going to see that underside all the time, and we want it to look real nice. So y'all come over here and check out how good this looks. We've got all of our edges trimmed using our little fine oscillating tool with that carbide bit or the diamond bit. But I wanted to discuss options. I always told you guys, you know, it's nice if you can spend the money or can get one of those tools. I think it's worth having around any kind of shop. But a lot of people will have a jigsaw or a saber saw, and you could theoretically, if you were very careful, obviously I don't have a blade in here right now, but you could very carefully trim this if you had a saber saw. And then what we've done in the past, before these little types of tools were even invented, is we would trim it close with a saber saw, or even you can use a small grinder with like a diamond, like a masonry cutoff style wheel, and you can do the same. You could kind of a plunge cut, you know, and cut across there. And then what we're gonna do is, when this is all done, you'll notice that there is still a gel coat edge. There's a bit of a reveal. We're gonna wait till we're gonna finish fairing this thing, and then when we pop it out of the mold, we are gonna take this grinder and we're gonna sand it down till we sanded through that little gel coat edge, and then we'll finish it up with a block sander and a DA. But I also wanted y'all to see how nice this surface looks once we went over it with the scraper. And then y'all have seen me 100 times use our little 3M block, and that is some 40 grit, which is kind of my go-to for this heavy stuff. Now, I used a little block, and we went around and we sanded and shaped and faired a bit. And again, this is a good time when we were doing this. You're wanting to wear a mask the whole time. But sometimes in these corners, like right in here in these curves, it's best to take it off the disc. And I like to just work it like that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's surprising how much material. Now, we are going to be adding some filler to this and shaping this thing up. But it's well after 7 o'clock. It's getting pretty late. We're probably going to call it an afternoon. But I do want to thank everybody that's been watching the channel. If you're enjoying the content so far and you haven't subscribed, now would be an awesome time to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. So, yeah, get ready for some fairing and filling coming up. All right, so we have started the filling process just around the edges of our hardtop, and we're using some of this 3M premium filler. It is a vinyl ester, so that's going to be the same kind of product that we're using for the laminating resin on this. Now, you guys know I'm a big fan of 3M. They don't sponsor me anything. I wish they did, because they're an awesome company. I love their products. This is a very good product. It's approved for below the water line, and in small batches, for me, it works great. I'm going to show y'all how it works. It's got a couple little unique things about it that sometimes are a little tricky, but what we're doing, we're just using it around these edges. I'm going to make a couple passes. Now, this is a brand new can. This stuff runs right at about $100 a gallon, or a quart rather. I'm sorry, about $100 a quart. Always want to mix it very thoroughly. Like all fillers, you want to be sure you got a good thorough mix there. And I've got some other fillers that we routinely use, and I kind of wanted to show you guys and gals some interesting things. Now, I've had a few comments. You guys know in the past that we've used a lot of the Napa Pro Strand, which is a short strand body filler. And a comparable product to the Pro Strand would be the EverCoat Fiberglass. This is also a short strand fiberglass, and this is a waterproof body filler. Now, I've had a few folks talk about me using body fillers or something that might be an automotive, considered automotive. And some of the comments have been there's talc in it. That's one of the fillers that kind of gives it that that light filler quality. But even in the 3M vinyl ester premium filler, $100 a quart. I don't know if y'all can see that, but if where that little black arrow, there is actually talc, or talcum powder is also listed as an ingredient. So just because there's talc in a filler does not mean it's a inferior product or can't be used for certain applications. Certainly above the water line or in smaller boats where maybe budget is a concern and you're putting gel coat over it. Again, even a ultra premium filler has that in it. So don't let that completely throw you off. And as always, you guys and you folks, use what you're comfortable with. Like if you have had good experience with something else and you like it, by all means, but don't be fooled sometimes by what will work and what won't work. And I try to give you guys a range in pricing. Pro Strand's about $100 a gallon. This is about $100 a quart. So we're going to go ahead, and what we're doing, we're just using this around the perimeter of our hardtop here. We're not going to use it over every surface because quite honestly, we'd use about $300 worth of filler. Typically, I like one row of catalyst kind of from one side to the other. And I like to kind of turn it over and just chop it in. Go from one side, go to the other side, roll it back and forth till you get a nice even mix. It'll kind of slightly change colors there. And now if you want to do a below the waterline repair, the 3M vinyl ester fillers are very good. They also have a high strength filler that comes in a red and white can. And you folks have seen me use some of that before as well. Now, I really like it. That is one of my favorite products of all time. It's very, very strong. It bonds very, very well to a variety of materials, and it's approved for below the waterline application. So that is what the stuff should look like there when we've got a good mix. Always a good idea to wear some eye protection if possible. And we're going to kind of just get some material down the edge here. Notice I always like to kind of spread out my filler. That's going to give you a little longer working life. If it's in a big clump or a big thick area, it's going to generate heat within itself, and it's going to accelerate the cure. We've already done a bit of this. Maybe you folks can comment if there are some fillers that you've had good success with or products that you like. I'm always willing to try and experiment with new stuff, so feel free to leave a comment. Let me know if you've had good success with something. But a lot of folks out there I know are working on smaller, inexpensive boats, and if you go in the marine hardware store and you see $300, $350 a gallon, you may never tackle the project. And there's a lot of stuff that is okay with a less expensive filler if it's a non-critical, non-crucial. Now, if you got a very expensive high-end sport fisherman that stays in saltwater all the time and it is a high-end repair, by all means go for the high-end. Now, we've got our drywall knife that's custom modified. We've got a radius on one corner that's slightly different than the other. The radius on this part is going to be that fuller radius, so we're just going to get up here right above and a smooth, easy draw. Sometimes you'll get a little, want to back up and get that again. You can see we can catch some of it. Sometimes you got to add a little more filler, vary the pass a little. One other technique that can be used sometimes, folks, is you can use a gloved hand or finger to tool in certain unusual contours and shapes. It's okay to do that. A little unorthodox. Not always recommend having a gloved hand there, but sometimes it can work pretty good just shaping it that way. But again, I like the end result of this 3M filler, but the workability of it is not my favorite. It gets real weird after that first initial pass, and you kind of gotta stop messing with it once it starts acting strange. Try to get plenty of filler on here, and we'll come back and knock that down. Edges are always trickier. Edges are always trickier than flats. What we'll do as soon as this tacks off, we're gonna hit it with some 40 grit. I'm gonna clean up this board real quick. We've got a little material left over there. I'm gonna touch up a little more in this corner. But I'm telling you, the 3M vinyl ester, it's a little tricky to work with. It gets a little skim over the edge of it, the top of it, and kind of drags along. Especially when you're working a large area. If you're working a smaller area, not going to be a problem. You could also use some of the Formula 27 in an application like this. So many different options. There's a little roughness in a thin spot there. Come back and just kind of touch that up. Better to overfill slightly than underfill. And again, the thing is, you do not want this to sit a long time. So as soon as we get this board cleaned up, we are gonna knock this down with some 40 grit. Start shaping it up, because if you let it cure overnight, you're not gonna wanna try to sand it by hand or block. It's gonna take a machine to move it. All right, gonna clean up just a little bit before this sets. We'll get to shaping her up. So we've made some good progress. Y'all check out what we've done here. You can see that we've got down to where we're seeing a little bit of fiberglass showing through. You don't want to go much thinner than that. We're using something pretty aggressive. It's 40 grit. I'm just using this little DeWalt palm sander. It works really good, but I want to show you folks a little bit of what we're doing. We're going to turn the vacuum on. Get our mask on. Now, obviously they do make disc with the vacuum, the holes in it. I didn't happen to have any of those for this particular machine, so that's why I'm using the shop vac for that today. But that little machine will do a real good of just an initial rough knockdown. And then I'm just taking the 40 and blocking this out a little bit. I like to sand till we see a little bit of the fiberglass, the high point just starting to show through, and then I usually will stop. You can see we're starting to get a little bit of show through right there. That is probably okay, so that is kind of what the initial rough knockdown should look like, in my opinion. Now, we've got a lot more fairing to do on this flat surface, but this afternoon I kind of wanted to get at least the edges done. I kind of wanted to do those first, and we'll add some filler on our next phase. So I hope that was helpful. If you guys are enjoying it, give us the thumbs up, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys next. We're going to be spreading some mud on the flat spots. All right, so we have moved on to the next phase. If we pan on over here, you can actually see there's a bunch of white gel coat on the surface. So there are always options when we do this, and I always try to show you guys there are fillers, there are homemade stuff. And what I decided to do, I've got some white gel coat with wax in it. And what I've decided to do is just float a couple coats on there. And we've already started, but I'm gonna show y'all the second coat and how we're gonna do it. Now, always want to be sure your gel coat is mixed thoroughly, especially if it's gel coat with wax in it. We have already done that with this gallon, and I'm going to go with about a half a quart or so. And it is quite warm today. It is well into the 90s, but I do want this to move along pretty well. Got a stirring stick. We're gonna get some eye protection. A good fan's not a bad idea. And we're gonna go with about 7 cc's or so. Now I've already got some on there and it's got wax in it, but there is a little technique, I kind of call it hot coating. It's basically, if you put gel coat with wax and you let it thoroughly cure till it has a waxy sheen on surface, you're gonna have to use a de-waxer and some sandpaper to put some scuff back on it. But we just applied this about 10 minutes ago, and it is firm enough for me to touch, but you can see a tiny bit of residue. So my finger's not really sticking to it and it's not coming loose, but it's not fully cured. And if I time it just right, there's about a 15 or 20 minute window, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on temperature, that you can actually get another coat with wax on there, and it won't disturb the base coat because it's firmed up, but the base coat is still receptive to a second coat of gel coat with wax. Seems like I get more questions regarding gel coat with wax, when to add it, when can you use it. Generally, we only use it on the last coat. Now what we're gonna do, gel coat is a little bit lighter than just pure resin, and it kind of has some filling properties. And if you use a blade to spread it out, you can kind of get some fairing and some shaping. And so that is what we're doing. So that is very thoroughly mixed. We're gonna go ahead and get a little bit, just kind of distribute it around. On our whole panel here. We gotta work fast. Now remember, gel coat will give you more working life if you can get it out of the cup. It creates heat within itself. You got a mass of material, and the more gel coat there is in a mass, the more heat it'll generate as it starts to cure. The more heat it generates, the faster it'll cure. So y'all probably notice that I oftentimes will get it out of the pan. Now we got a big sheetrock blade that I've modified these. You notice we got different radii or radiuses on the corners. Sheetrock blade. And I'm basically just gonna get some of this material spread out all around. And it's amazing how good this can do. Now, I've already got one full coat on the forward half of this, so we're gonna get better coverage as we're working up here. But you can see how that will just kind of float out and fill in a lot of irregularities. Gel coat's about, oh gosh, let's say around $100 a gallon. The vinyl ester filler that we used on the edges of this is about $100 a quart. And I had some white gel coat. Now one thing you gotta remember too, when I say I had some white gel coat, these materials don't last forever, especially in the summertime. When it's hot down here, you've got about 3 months, I would say, is your shelf life for a lot of this stuff. So if I've had some material around, that can of the vinyl ester, the high strength filler from 3M, I'm looking for it. I was going to show you guys again. Here it is. Here it is. I know I'm all over the place, but I got to work in a hurry. That is really, really good if we're doing some like below the waterline repairs, or I've got some dings or chips. But like I said, it's quite a bit more expensive, and I just bought that. Whereas I've got this gel coat, and it kind of needs to be used up. So I'm like, and I don't think I've showed this technique to you folks yet. And what we're doing, we're just moving this material around, trying to get a bit of an even coat everywhere, and then I will fine tune it. Now this is probably best to practice on a small part first, or a smaller area at first. I'm doing a pretty big panel here, but I've done this before. So I've got a little bit of material everywhere, and now what we are going to go to doing is just really smoothing this out. We're going to pull material where we have low spots. The main reason I was in a hurry though is I wanted to get some on and over that first coat, because again, you've got a short window when gel coat with wax will receive more gel coat without it being a problem. All right, that's starting to look good. I'm gonna kind of come from the side and work across. You don't want to put too much material on there, or else you'll get these big ridges and pulls. Sometimes I will take the blade and we'll pull a little off of the panel just like that. So that way I can kind of control the amount of material. See, if I want to take some of that off, I can just put it back in the cup. Now I can kind of settle in a little bit. Just focus on smoothing this out, getting some nice even distribution. Now sometimes it takes 2 or 3 passes, but honestly this wet gel coat flows out nicer than most body fillers, and I find that I can get it done faster. We're always looking for more efficient ways to get a good result. You see we got a little low spot right there. So sometimes you can take a little bit back out of the cup, add it to it. And again, don't expect to get it on one pass. Typically it takes 2 or 3 passes to get good coverage, but if you time it right, you don't have to wait between coats. That's what I'm trying to do today. We are trying to get this knocked out. We have been very busy with our fishing charters. Y'all seem to have enjoyed the fishing video. Thank you for checking that out. That's very cool. And that's what we've been doing a lot of, so that's why my shop production has been a little bit less than usual. It helps to have long arms too, I'll tell you that. We're just going to knock down some of these ridges, and again we may come back with a third coat. We'll give this 10 or 15 minutes to tack off, and we'll get one more hot coat on this thing. And timing is important. You'll notice when you're drawing the blade over this, there will be plenty of time where it'll work just fine and come out real nice and smooth, and then all of a sudden it'll kind of start to pull and almost make like a cottage cheese on top. And at that point, just need to stop. Wherever you are, you're just gonna have to stop and regroup and get ready for another coat. All right, we're gonna give this about 10 or 15 minutes to tack off. We'll probably do one more hot coat. All right, folks, we got another batch coming up. I'm gonna recycle an older cup here. Sometimes we will do that in the shop. This is not a super critical batch because it's just going to be sanded off. We're kind of using it as a filler, but I'm going back with about another half a quart or so. And it is getting warmer throughout the day, but we had plenty of working time, it seemed like, with that last batch. So I'm going to stick at about 7 or 8 cc's or so. Remember, some eye protection, good respirator, rubber gloves, wearing some PPE. A lot of times we have the fan running, and when we're doing this stuff in big production, and when you guys aren't seeing this video, we're always wearing a respirator and a mask, got plenty of airflow, so just be mindful of that. And again, we're catching this gel coat. It has started to firm up, but it's still got a little bit of tack to it. You got a short window there where you got to catch it, but I believe we can get all 3 coats on here, and This thing will be ready to start sanding on this afternoon. So this is a real good way. And we're going to end up with about 1.5 quarts of gel coat, and that should get most of the filling done on this particular piece. Really good thorough mix. Generally mix it till you know it's mixed, and then mix it just a little more is the kind of rule of thumb there. All right. A lot of folks too, sometimes the way we're doing stuff, there's always more than one way to do things. I'm trying to show some variety and some versatility, and sometimes you can work with materials that you have, or if you got something, like I said, this gel coat really needed to be used up, and it made sense just to go ahead and use it as our coat today rather than using some of that fresh 3M filler. And honestly, I think it's easier to spread this gel coat in an application like this. I mean, see how easy it is to get some. Just get some everywhere. We will be sanding a pretty good bit of this off here. Now, another one of the tricks is to catch this as soon as it firms up and doesn't gum up our paper. We want to start sanding this stuff, because gel coat and epoxies in general, they get harder and harder. If you leave them on there quite some time, you're going to be dealing with some very hard to sand material. So just keep that in mind. You want to try to get after it as soon as you can. Very good. Sometimes even working in different directions. Make a pull down the middle. If we've been pulling from side to side, sometimes we'll make a couple pulls down the middle and work our material in that way. And again, this is a pretty big part, so if you've never done this, probably a good idea to start with something a little smaller, or maybe have someone who's helping you with the process, because it can go pretty fast. And gel coat always has to be catalyzed with a hardener. It's methyl ethyl ketone peroxide, or catalyst, hardener, many names for it, but always important to remember that you're going to need to catalyze it at 1 to 2% typically. All right, now sometimes what I will do, dip into our acetone bucket and just get our little paintbrush that we use, and occasionally just use a little bristle brush and pull some of this material around these edges, kind of blend and contour this a bit. Trying to use all of the gel coat we have. Just like so. All right, well, I'm going to continue to spread this out. 3 coats should be plenty. As you can see, we've got most of our coverage, and from this point on, I'm going to kind of just be detailing things. We're going to be dragging this blade around, trying to pick up some of these little ridges and little corners there. So y'all come in here and check this out. We have already started the sanding process. You can see our gel coat has thoroughly cured. We've given it about 2 hours or so, and I've got several different tools I want to show y'all. This went surprisingly fast, but I have a modified tool here. Now this is our Bosch. It's a variable speed buffer, sander, polisher. And what I've done is I've taken and modified, if y'all look there, that is a special disc. Basically what I did is I took like a buffing pad with a Velcro, but it was too big for our standard 6-inch discs. I actually put this thing on our bandsaw and I cut a bit of it off around the perimeter. So you've got this large, flat Velcro disc that you can fit 6-inch discs on. Now, I'm sure there's probably someone who makes such a thing, but I couldn't find one locally, so I made it. And let me tell you, this thing is a sanding monster for this kind of stuff. It doesn't orbit or oscillate. You can make it variable speeds, slow it down, speed it up. But if you don't have one of these, you can also use just your little D-Wall. That's a little orbital electric. Or if you go old school, just your old 3M block. But that's going to be a lot of elbow grease. So y'all come over here. I want to show you, anytime you're doing fairing and shaping like this, you're going to want a good mask. I know y'all have seen me a bunch of times with this 3M Secure Click, a bunch of good discs. Right now I am running, that is the Sunmite brand, and those are 60 grit. 80 would also work. And then we're using some of the 3M, the dry guide coat. And you guys may have seen me apply some of this before. You put this on here, and that way you know exactly where you've been and if you've missed any spots. So I'm going to turn fans on for a second, put my mask on. I want to show y'all what this Bosch will do. Again, this is a slightly modified tool. I'm not running it super fast, but it does a good job. You can see just that fast. We are already down. We are already down to the fiberglass. Now a good shop vac. And if you got a dust extraction tool, obviously if you got something that'll pick up the dust as you're sanding. Now what's cool about the guide coat is you can see here it shows you where you haven't sanded and if there are any low spots. Now what I like to do is use the big sander. Use the big sander for the bulk, and then what I'll do is a lot of times I'll run the freshest disc on the big sander on the initial cut, and then this disc still has plenty of life on it. I'll switch it over to my little detail sander, and you can see this stuff up here on the edges. Spots right there. All right, now at this point, a lot of times I will shift to the detail sanding. Now, typically if we were just in production and doing this in the shop, I would go ahead and knock everything down with the big sander first. And that's kind of what we did on that other side. I did all of the half of it, and then I came back with the smaller electric, and then we'll come back and we will just detail sand. So you're just using an older disc and contouring and shaping in these corners and edges. Now you can see right here, for example, when I was sanding, this big powerful disc got away from me a little bit and I bumped the edge. What we'll do is when we're all done shaping this, I'll come back around and we'll use a little bit of like Formula 27 or some thickened gel coat, and we'll come back and we'll do little detail touch up on things. But this can go pretty fast with the right tools. But if you do like a 3-step process, that's going to be the way to go. So we finished all of our sanding and most of our prep work. I want to show y'all where we are now though. Now of course y'all have seen me before with a little acetone and a rag. What we did is thoroughly wiped all this surface down after we blew it off and vacuumed it. And I went around with just a regular old pencil. Now don't want to use a pen, don't want to use a magic marker, because those can bleed back through the gel coat. But I went around and I was just looking for a little, you can see where the guide coat shows there's a little imperfection there. There are a couple little places where I kind of got a little too tight there with the sander. And I tell you, I've mentioned this before, like when we were doing the fairing and shaping, it's amazing what your hand will feel, and it's okay to kind of run your hand over these surfaces, and a lot of times you will feel little imperfections that are actually really hard to see. So we did the original fairing and shaping around the perimeter with the 3M. That's the premium vinyl ester filler. I'm probably gonna go back with that just because that's what we were using previously. But if you weren't using vinyl ester or you didn't have any more of that, the Formula 27 would certainly work well. I'm a big fan of both of these. And again, just want to show y'all some options. The Formula 27 cost about 1/3 or 1/4 as much as the 3M vinyl ester filler. But this should not take a lot. Got a little flexible spreader blade. I trimmed this one off. It was a bigger one and kind of cut it down. And it's hot today, so we're not having to go crazy with the cream hardener. That ought to be plenty. And that will usually come with these kind of fillers. So a lot of times people ask, where do you get the little hardener or the cream hardener? And most of these will work interchangeably. Like if it's a polyester, like if it was the Pro Strand or the Evercoat or the 3M Premium Marine Filler, all these cream hardeners will generally catalyze one another. Now, if in doubt, I recommend doing a little test batch before. Matter of fact, anything you guys are thinking about doing, or if you're not seeing me do it on the channel and you got some materials you want to try but you're not sure, do a small test batch somewhere and test for compatibility before you commit to a large panel or a large piece, because sometimes stuff doesn't interchange, it doesn't work. So just be mindful there. But the 3M high strength filler putties will interchange with a lot of your polyester fillers. So we've got a good, nice, smooth mixture, and I'm going to come in and we're just going to skim some of these little spots here. Just getting a nice, tight, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want a big, clumpy mess. But it helps a lot to go around and circle these spots beforehand rather than mixing up your batch of material and trying to walk around and find them. Once you've activated this material, you don't have very long, and it's best to spend all that time on prep. And this doesn't have to be perfect, and again, it is hot, so I have to move right along, or else we're gonna have a problem. We're gonna have a problem. This is going pretty well. We've done the filler coats, the 3 filler coats of gel coat today, and it didn't take but about an hour, maybe less, to get all of that filler knocked down. Gel coat can work surprisingly well over a large area like this. And the knives I were using were just your standard sheetrock mud knives, something you would buy like it again at Lowe's or Home Depot. Got a little crazy there. Sometimes you'll get a little too close. And this 3M filler is what you would want to use if you were doing below the waterline work, and if the boat was staying in the water for a good length of time. Really like the vinyl esters. And again, one of the big advantages of vinyl esters is it's compatible with gel coat. You can gel coat over it. Whereas if you're using an epoxy repair or epoxy primer, gel coat generally does not work, and it is not recommended to go over epoxy. All right, so we have pretty much used up that batch. I will mix up one more little batch, and as soon as this tacks off, we will go to sanding it, because this stuff gets crazy hard. So sand it as soon as it's ready. So we made pretty good progress. You can see we've already knocked down several of these spots. We're using the 60 grit on the little DeWalt. Got a couple more spots here. Check this out. It works really good. Got a real nice feathered edge there. It's blended in. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, we're gonna jump right over to these. Then we'll come back and detail this. Just like so. Got a little bit more of that to do, but I think you guys get the gist of it. We're trying to hammer through this thing and get all this fairing done today. We are getting so close, y'all. So all the sanding, shaping, fairing, for the most part, is done. And we're getting ready to rig up a little bridle here, and that's why we left these little bits of raw fiberglass so I could drill a hole in there and give me something with some purchase. And I want to show you folks a knot, and it's a knot, it's called a bowline knot. It looks like bowline the way they spell it. And if there's one knot you're gonna learn when it comes to tying stuff up that you gotta pull down on, but you need to be able to get it loose easily, this is the knot. So I like to hold the tag end in my right hand, and you're gonna roll a loop under. So we're rolling a loop under, and my dad always taught me, you're basically, a rabbit comes out of the hole, he runs around the back of the tree, and he dives back in the hole again. That's gonna make a bowline. Now you can pull on this knot as hard as you want to pull. I mean, you could tie it to a truck and pull it till the rope breaks. And all you have to do to get it loose is this part right here. You break that part over, and it'll come undone just as easy as you please. Now, when I was a boy, my dad said I was an expert at a hatchet knot. And if you know what a hatchet knot is, that means when you draw it down tight, the only way you can get it loose is with a hatchet or a knife. You gotta saw that knot. But a bowline, I'm gonna show you once again. The loop goes under. Remember the rabbit, he comes out of the hole, runs around the back of the tree, dives back in the hole again. And that is gonna hold you nice and secure, and it's crazy tough. You can't believe how well it holds, but you can break it loose with just your bare hands. So, what we're doing here is I'm gonna rig up a bit of a bridle. We've got some shackles. Can't have too many shackles around the shop. That is a handy dandy thing to have. There we go. All right, we're gonna try to make this thing somewhat equal. Got a big shackle here. Sometimes it takes a little experimentation, but basically we're gonna lift on this thing from 4 points. It's not that heavy, but it's kind of bulky. And this thing is a high value piece, man. If you include the time to build the plug, the mold, and the part, we've got some serious time in this thing. So I'm pretty stoked to be where we are right now. And we're getting late in the day, so getting done with this thing, trying to get done so we can go home, get to a good stopping point. Now, we have had a lot of folks comment about if you wanted to do a one-off or a one-of-a-kind, and you certainly could. And again, we may show some examples of that kind of work in the future. We may have another project that we're going to build on, and then I think we're going to have some more fishing content coming for you folks at home. Y'all seem to be enjoying our last little fishing trip video. I think we may do one with maybe me and my brother and Logan, though, kind of more of a family type fishing trip versus with clients. So y'all let me know if you'd be interested and excited to see some of that. All right. Back in there, and we'll cinch it down, and we'll kind of get it somewhat even. Now this isn't a crazy high load or super duper stressful, but you still don't want it to come undone. And I don't want to cut my piece of rope here because a good length of rope is a valuable thing to have around the shop. I'm just going to throw a couple, what my dad called a half hitch. You just kind of do a little half hitch there, and it's surprisingly strong. All right, let's see if we might do a little lifting on this thing and just kind of see. Oh, the moment of truth, pretty exciting. We may have to introduce a little air. I've got a little lift on it. Oh yeah. There you go. She's looks like she's lifting right out. All right, I'll tell you what, y'all might want to be there at the, kind of at the front. I think we're completely loose. I've just got my balance. My balance is off a little bit. Woohoo! Oh man, dude, look at that. Oh wow, it looks pretty. Looks good. I don't see any flaws or problems, man. Check that out. Oh my goodness, that is a lot of work, and man, that is going to be a super nice addition. It came out super easy. I had a feeling it would. Now, if you remember when we were prepping this thing, we ended up doing 7 coats. I had a question about that the other day. We used the Orca shimmer. That's a mold release specific to this kind of work, and that is the first part we've pulled out of the mold. And then each subsequent part, if we want to build another 1 or 2 coats of wax, would be plenty. But yeah, I hope y'all can see under there. That looks really good. I'm quite happy with that. I think this is probably going to be the end of this video. We are going to do a little more trimming. You guys can see we got a little bit of an edge yet to trim down, and we're going to be gel coating the underside of this. And we are still figuring out what we're going to do about an aluminum tower or top to support this thing. It is going to be aluminum. I know how to weld aluminum, but I don't currently have any welding equipment, so I'm considering maybe even building it myself or see if I can find a local shop that can work with us. But if y'all enjoyed this video, please remember, give us the likes, the shares, the thumbs up, comments, all that good stuff. Tell a friend, any other social media platform. It is greatly appreciated. So as always, folks, Captain Joe here, Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV on YouTube. Awesome cameraman working hard behind the scenes, and we will catch you guys, it got me, next time out.